Welcome to my World History Notes, where I discuss things I'm learning about the Cold War. Some things I knew, but some details, many details, I had no idea about. I'm learning these things, and they're very on the surface. They're not, this isn't like a real in-depth study. I'm not a scholar, and this isn't a very polished video. It's just me sharing with you things I'm learning. It's fun for me. I'm not trying to make money, so that's not an issue. If you want to subscribe, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. But I just want to share things I'm learning that I never knew. They're fascinating to me. It's just amazing. Actually, it's amazing stuff. Um, and you'll find it on Wikipedia. You'll find it on Encyclopedia Britannica. You'll find it in different places. I mean, but it's not. You don't have to go dig deep. So if you have an interest in this, things you want to find out, things you've never learned before, then I hope you'll pursue it. Take some names that I bring up, and we'll begin. I want to talk about real quick. Um, you know, the modern Marxist, the modern communist, and I mean little c. I'm not saying that when Americans think of communism, they think of Soviet Union or the Chinese Communist Party, but those are just two national examples. Um, the communist little c, you might call them globalists even. They're collectivists. It's the philosophy that your identity is you don't have an identity apart from a group or apart from the state, and that you derive your rights from the state. They don't like the idea of God-given rights or things like that. And the modern Marxist, if you're in America today, well, even other countries as well, but if you're in America today, you'll find that the old liberal ideals of free speech are being cast aside. They talk about canceling people. Free speech used to be a hallmark, a benchmark of liberalism, of and intolerance. Tolerating people, other people you don't agree with, that aren't like you. That's free speech and tolerance, which were benchmarks of liberalism, of classical liberalism, from which flowed the United States Constitution, but also of liberalism, progressivism in the early 20th century. They have become Marxists have made them emblems of oppression, um, and they are really opposed to them. Things that we've always taken for granted as being fundamental Americanisms. And I'm quoting from a study guide to the theories of Herbert Marcuse, who is considered the father of the New Left. The New Left, the second and third generation of the New Left, controls the Democratic Party in the U.S. now. So in this book, this this basically he's sympathetic to Marcuse's ideas, but he notes that free speech and tolerance become instruments of oppression. Can you imagine that? Disdaining liberal hypocrisy, Marcuse would reserve tolerance only for those who would overthrow the oppressive culture. The forces of reaction will be met with the intolerant suppression of word and deed. Similarly, he condones selective counterviolence against the legal violence of the state, unquote. So that's where look at them when you see the news and you see that, they don't want conservatives speaking out on Twitter, or they don't want, um, they don't think that you should have a voice in the public square, or, you know, then this is not the liberal, the Democrat or the liberal of the 1940s or 50s or 60s. This is not the party of JFK. Okay, this is not the party of Jimmy Carter. This is the party of Karl Marx now. And free speech and tolerance are emblems and symbols of oppression, and you can see that everywhere. Um, when they say that your speech makes them feel unsafe, they're not meaning that they think that you 1,000 miles away are going to come punch them in the nose. They're talking about ideologically unsafe. That the Marxists of today does not want to hear opposing viewpoints. And I have a problem with that, even if it's a conservative. When a conservative doesn't want to hear opposing viewpoints and shouts people down, I thrive on hearing people who don't agree with me, because that sharpens what I think and makes it more clear to me. And also, it can change my opinion about things. But the key is to not only know what you believe, but to know why you believe it, so that when somebody questions you, you're not just repeating what somebody else told you. So let's now go on. I want to bring up an example of a communist influencer of culture. Okay, and they're in every country, but this guy's an Australian. So I thought he was really interesting, and I hope you'll dig into him if you're interested. His name was Harry Stein, and Harry Stein was an Australian communist, but he was also a jazz musician and a writer. He was an active member of the Communist Party of Australia until 1968, when the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia, and that kind of turned a lot of the Marxists in the West off. They were kind of looking then to create their new utopia based on other things rather than parroting and speaking for the Soviet Union. A lot of the '56 invasion of Hungary, which we'll get to, and then Czechoslovakia in '68. That kind of turned off a lot of the Western Marxists because they thought of themselves as decent people, and this was simply purely imperialism to them. But anyway, Harry Stein was born in 1919, and he was the leader. He became a member of the Communist Party of Australia um, after being taking a job as a ship steward at the age of 18. He was born in 1919. Now, here's the thing about his influence. He was the leader of the Eureka Youth League, which was a group affiliated with the Communist Party. And in 1945, he founded the Eureka Hot Jazz Society. He played drums, and he was really enthusiastic about jazz. And so he had he really, later he worked for the communist newspaper, the Tribune, and he actually had some things to do in Vietnam, South Vietnam, but and he was disenchanted with the Soviet Union following the Soviet Union's invasion of Czechoslovakia. He left the Communist Party because basically the Communist Party in any country was controlled by the Soviet Union. That gave it its marching orders. So he's a very interesting person. He supported Soviet-style communism, um, and he had some of those fantastical ideals about the Soviet Union that many communists do. But he was an influencer. He was a social influencer. So I just want to point that out to you as important to understand. Now let's go to the timeline. On July 5th, 1945. Now remember, Europe, the war has been won in Europe, but not yet in Asia. Japan hasn't been defeated yet. But the United Kingdom had a general election. And this is very significant for the future of Great Britain. The results would not be announced until a Potsdam conference was concluded. So this general election, I just thought this was interesting. This general election brought in let's see, I just want to make sure I get to the right place where I was looking. It was a landslide victory with the Labor Party. Okay, the Labor Party won overwhelmingly, and the Labor Party. What happened was um, the this was one of the most radical British governments of the 20th century, and it was led by Clement Attlee. Okay, and one of the most important things about it, they nationalized major industries and utilities, very socialist bent, including the Bank of England, coal mining, the steel industry, electricity, gas, inland transport, including roadways, railways, road haulage, and canals. It implemented a cradle to grave welfare state, um, and 1948, the creation of Britain's National Health Service. So you have publicly funded medical treatment for all, and they basically went in the process of dismantling the British Empire. So this was a socialist government, basically. And they were this is where Britain made a sharp turn to the left right after the war. And there was a lot of Soviet influence and Soviet agents in the British government. We'll talk about some of them, but very important time in the Cold War. Shows you the Cold War is much more complicated than simply communism versus a democracy or something like that. There was a lot of shades in there and a lot of struggle back and forth. I just hope you'll dig into that. Um, but uh, the we'll stop there, and I just hope that this will encourage you to dig into the Cold War, and we'll continue. I want to get into events like in China, Vietnam, Africa, places like that. As we're moving around, I want to bring up different people's names who are interesting to me, that you might be interesting to you, and just events that are just like, wow, I didn't realize that happened like that. I can see how that would have influenced this later event. I can see where we're at now because of that. So, and the right, the right wing, the anti-communists are not necessarily always the good guys. Many times, and I will show you that they've prolonged, especially the U.S. policy, prolonged the Cold War. So that's going to be controversial. You might not agree with me, but that's okay. I'm just hoping that you'll be interested in studying this stuff. So anyway, thank you, and talk to you later.